Guys, we are back and we're going to be continuing from where we left off. Chapter 3. I counted how much pages there were. There's 11 pages, so here we go. The Bay of a Thousand Scales was farther away than Tsunami had realized. She'd been studying the Macaparia since she was tiny, but it was hard to fit the picture over the enormous world below her. She kept expecting to find neat little spirals of islands that would fit in the palm of her talons. Instead, she found herself flying over vast expanses of empty ocean, dotted here and there with a solitary outcropping of rock. After they took a long detour inland to convince the Skywing they'd gone from the opposite direction, they circled around north and flew out to the sea. They managed to make it to a small rocky island shortly after the night fell, but according to Starfoot, they were still a long way from the Bay of a Thousand Scales. They calculated the distance and their speed and had a long, boring lecture ready to explain it all. The rest of them fell asleep halfway into it, and he spent the next day sulking about it. Still, Snow had admitted, if only to herself, that it was useful having someone with all the geography and flight plans in his head for a few days. They stopped whenever they saw an island, ate a seagull or fish if they could catch any. Then they flew on. Tsunami tried diving into the ocean several times and was disappointed. Discovered she couldn't swim as fast as she flew. The only good news was that the ocean water helped to heal the burn on her neck. It was 4 mornings later when Tsunami finally woke up to an island that was officially part of the Thousand Scales. She started awake from a dream in which their cave had collapsed and was slowly crushing her to death, and discovered that Clay rolled over on top of her in the middle of the night. Grumbling, she wriggled out from him and let his sail flop over onto Starflight's head. 5 dragonets were packed into a cavern halfway up a tall sea cliff. It was cramped and uncomfortable and smelled of seagull droppings. Clay had barely been able to scrunch his wings low enough to crawl inside. Why were they sleeping in this horrible spot instead of the nice white sandy beach below? Tsunami sat down in the cave entrance and glared at still snoring away Clay, was stuffed against the back wall with Sunny between his front talons and Starflight curled up alongside. Even Glory had her tail draped over Clay's. Her scales glinted orange and gold in the light of the rising sun, with bursts of red when she shifted sleepily. Starflight had been acting weird since the night winds gave him back. Suddenly it seemed like he wanted to argue with Tsunami about everything, and she said, "Let's go sleep on the beach. It'll be fun." He said, No. We have to sleep in the hidden cave." That'll be much safer. Safer. As if there was anything to worry about all the way out here in the middle of the night. Everyone was still mad about her attacking soldiers, so they all voted Starflight. She didn't like that development at all. Tsunami watched them sleep for a moment. It was so hard to lead effectively when everyone kept questioning you and complaining about it. She only wanted what was best for them. They didn't know that. Didn't they know that? She'd always figured she would fight 100 Skywings to protect them. But maybe I shouldn't. Maybe my friends don't want my protection after all. Maybe they want Starflight to be their leader instead, even though he never risked one scale on his body for them. Snowy glanced down at the sea, sparkling aquamarine below her. Somewhere in those blue-green depths were her family, her parents, her kingdom, everything that should have been hers if the townspeople hadn't stolen her away and ruined her life. Perhaps the problem with her friends was that they were from different tribes, all stubborn and muddled up, instead of sensible like sea wings, maybe her own kind. I'll be right back. I'm just gonna do something. There we go. And let's continue. Understand her better. They appreciate her instead of yelling at her. Well, she didn't have to sit here waiting for everyone else to wake up. It wasn't like they'd be much help when it came to searching anyway. Snowy stretched her wings and then tipped forward of the cave opening. Wind whistled past her snout, tugging at her tail as she plummeted down the cliff. At last, the top of the water, skimming it with her claws. Joy tingled through her scales. She spun and dove into the water. The sea was warmer than here and busy with underwater life. Her splash sent what seemed like 1,000 fish scattering away. Several of them disappeared into the pinkish-orange coral reef. I curled out of the sand like a petrified forest. A blobby dark blue octopus goggled at her from the silver at the edge of her vision as fish fled from her webbed claws. No welcoming committee of delighted sealings, though no glowing jellyfish are no jellyfish making a path for the Queen Coral's castle. No cavalier of bowing seahorses and bejeweled lobsters to lead the way. Not that she'd been picturing the homecoming scene of the missing princess or anything. Snowy swam along the coral reef, peering at the creatures hidden in the nooks and holes. The hideous thing, she thought. Maybe you'll start to back at her. Little orange and white fish nested in the waving lavender anemones. She was still She was she still wasn't used to swimming in the sea, and that frustrated her. Unexpected currents kept knocking her off balance. The salt water felt like it was scraping roughly against her gills. Where were were her natural swimming instincts? Her role was not supposed to make her stronger, faster, tougher, or not pathetic. His role supposed Her world was supposed to make her stronger, faster, tougher, not pathetic. She swam all the way to the next island, finding the currents more than the pinkish coral reef stretched across the sand. Here as well, dotted with waving green fans and lacy dark purple ferns. Her wings felt sore and tired, so she spread them wide and floated near the surface not far from the land. Something flashed below her in the shadows of the coral reef, something very large. Sora had a brief vision of all the large, toothy things that might live in the ocean. Then she dismissed it. If it was a shark, she would kill it and bring it back to the other sea. So mainly she could see the look on Starflight's face. She flicked her tail to swim closer. It was another sea wing. A shiver rippled across her scales when she saw him, and part of her wanted to bolt right back to her friends. Don't be a smoke breather, she scolded herself. This is what you're hoping for, a dragon from your own tribe. She took a deep breath. This strange sea wing had dark blue horns and sky blue scales, several shades paler than hers. She was paddling by the coral reef, shifting his talons and wings slightly to change course. His head turned from side to side. Well, it wouldn't hurt to follow him for a while first, Tsunami told herself. She creeped along the top of the reef, peering over the edge of him. Her claws caught on small gaves in the coral. She accidentally poked an black lobster. She came bustling out with its long whiskers bristling and pincers snapping. It took one look at her and hustled right back into hiding. Up here, the reef was covered in a layer of green moss-like algae. When I passed a couple of large sea turtles slowly swimming nearby, an enormous tentacle thing like a sea spider sat nibbling bits of algae. The tips of the 8 dark purple legs, orange, yellow, and so did its eyes. The sea wing down below stopped suddenly and glanced around. Tsunami flattened herself against the reef. Knobbly bits of limestone poked into her underbelly. She speared through one of the holes at the other dragon. He spun so slowly, staring into the ocean depths. Had he heard her? But he didn't look up. The dragon checked around him one more time, then lit up the stripes along his wings. Almost immediately, another dragon, swam out of the cave in the coral reef. Tsunami thought. Much less handsome. His green scales were perfectly nice, but she didn't care for the black spiral patterns on them. He'd never seen She'd never seen a pattern like that on a dragon before, and his face wasn't nearly as handsome or friendly looking as the first dragon, although perhaps that had something to do with the giant bruise swollen over his left eye. She wondered if the guards were switching patrol duty. If so, they were being quite strange about it. The two dragons floated in place, staring at each other for what seemed like an eternity. Occasionally the stripes on the other sea wings would light up, then on another. They moved their talons about as if waving away fish, even though no fish went anywhere near them. Then the spiral marked the dragon ducked back into the cave, and the blue dragon swam on. Snowy wondered. I guess I'll have to learn some kind of sewing ritual. So I wondered, I guess I'll have to learn all that stuff in order to become queen. She lifted her wings to swim after the first dragon. A pair of yellow striped fish wriggled out from under her and shot away. The sky blue dragon swam back the way he come, toward the stretch of open sea between this island and the one where Tsunami's friends were sleeping. Now or never, Snowy thought. She'd rather meet this dragon than the other one, and she'd rather do it while he was alone, if she could. That seemed easier than trying to explain herself to a whole bunch of dragons at once. She beat her wings to catch up, dove over the edge of the reef, and swam around in front of him. The sea wings stirred back in an eddy of ripples. His eyes were a blue as dark. They were almost black. So I pointed up at the surface. Come on out of the water so we can talk. He tried to signal. Hopefully he'd figure out what she meant. To her surprise, he whipped around and fled. His tail smacked a wave of water in her face. Well, that's unfriendly, she thought. She swam after him, swinging her tail to propel herself even faster. He glanced back over his shoulder, saw her chasing him, and put on a burst of speed. Why was she running away? And how was he so fast? Stop! She tried to yell through the water. I just want to talk. Of course that didn't work. He didn't even slow down. But then he twisted to look back at Tsunami, and so he didn't see the whale that suddenly loomed out of the deep in front of him. Tsunami waved her talons, pointed. Watch out, she shouted in the state of bubbles. Sea wings smacked into the whale's side and careened backward. The whale was only slightly bigger than the dragon. 3 pages left. Ridges all along its back and a flat, mild-mannered face. It was a weird squeaking groan and blinked at the ceiling in confusion. The dragon was still shaking his head, trying to reincarnate himself. Tsunami caught up, grabbed his tail, and pinned to the sand. The whale blinked again and swam on. Eddies rippled around the two dragons as it poured away through the water. Now what do I do? Snowy thought. I have to get him to the surface to talk to him. But if I let him go, he might try to escape again. He frowned at the dragon and pointed at the surface again. Flashes of sunlight shimmered up above them, like pieces of broken white glass floating on the water. Our dragon tipped his head to one side. Lucid stripes lit up along his wings, flashing fast, then slow. Alright, Snowy thought. I can do that too. Maybe he's testing me. She lit up her own stripes, illuminating the ones on her snout. Then the ones along her tail, and finally her wings. See, my stripes flash too. I'm a sea wing. Now let's go up and talk. So she spread her wings and lifted up, prepared to grab him if he tried to bolt again. He scrambled upright but stayed with her. Encouraged, Tsunami swam a bit closer to the surface. He followed, but only for a bit before he stopped and looked around. His stripes flashed again, and this time his neck and tail. Patiently, Tsunami lit up her own stripes one more time, mirroring what he'd done. Seaweed's wings flared open with a whoosh, then scared fish into the reef. He lunged towards Tsunami, fast as a minnow. His front talons reached for her. Tsunami roared, blasting him in the eyes with bubbles, and sliced her claws across his snout. She didn't know why he was attacking. Maybe he was a traitor suing, or maybe he was guarding his territory or treasure. Perhaps he thought she was an intruder, although he wasn't much of a guard if his first instinct was to run away and his second was to attack with no reason. He'll be sorry when he finds out who I am, she thought fiercely. She kicked his underbelly hard with her back legs. He coughed up a stream of bubbles and fell back. Snowy spread her wings, snarled at him one more time, and shot to the surface. She burst into the air and kept beating her wings to rise into the sky. In the distance, she could see the cliffside cave and the worried faces on her friends poking out enormous splashes sounded behind her. The other seaweed scurried out of the water. His massive tail whacked the water twice as he lifted into the air, sending giant waves rushing in all directions. He looked bigger out here in the air, his hooked claws gleaming sharply in the sunlight. His dark blue eyes were fixed on her wings, the true citizen of her kingdom she'd ever met, and was coming to kill her. We're gonna leave off right there. The Johnny out. Peace!